In our next tutorial, we will show you how to edit a page on your website. Upon logging in and being greeted with your dashboard, we will use our mouse cursor to visit the front of the site. Next, we will go over to the Who, When and Where page, as this is the page we are wishing to edit. Next, we will use our mouse cursor and we will select Edit with Elementor. Please note that I am opening this in a new tab so that I can keep the front end open as well. Once the page is loaded, we will use our mouse cursor to navigate around the page. As you can see, while moving around, different sections are highlighted with a border. We will start with this section. As you can see, it is highlighted with a blue border, and we will select the Edit button at the top, and a window on the left will appear. As in our previous tutorials, we will start with our layout. Here we can stretch the section, change the content width, change the column gap, set the height, vertical alignment, the overflow, and so forth. The parallax and particles are add-ons, and you do not need to worry about this. In the Structure tab, you can see we currently have it set to 3 columns of 33% each, as seen here. Moving on to the Styling section, here we are able to change the background color as well as the background image. We can change the color by selecting the icon and choosing the color we wish. The image will be the same. We will select the image, and we can choose to upload an image from our media library, or we can choose to upload a new image from our computer. Moving on, we can change the positioning of the image, the attachment settings, the repeat settings, as well as the size settings. We can also add a scrolling effect and mouse effect. And moving on to the background overlay, you can see we currently have it set to black. We can change this to any color we wish, and we can change the intensity of this as well. Moving on, we can add a border to this entire section by selecting the type and changing the width and color, of course. You can see the border appears around the entire section. Set that back to default. The same can be done for the hover effect, so that the border only appears once we hover. Moving on to the shape divider, we can choose to add a shape divider to the top or to the bottom of the section. We can change the color, the width, and the height of these shape dividers. Moving on to the advanced section, here we have our margin and our padding. As you can see, we currently have padding set to 100 at the top and 100 at the bottom. If I was to remove the top padding, you will see this gap here will decrease, as seen there. If I was to insert the padding back at 200, we will see the gap at the top should be double the size of the gap at the bottom. I will set that back to 100 and we will continue. In the motion effects, here we can choose to add a scrolling effect or an entrance animation to this entire section. Moving on to the responsive, attributes, and custom CSS. This is more for in-depth development, and you will not be required to fiddle here. Now that we have covered the section, we will move on to the columns. As you can see here, there are currently 3 columns, indicated by the dotted white border. By selecting the Edit button, the window on the left appears again. Here we can change the layout settings, including the alignment, and in the Styling section, we can change the background, including the background color, as seen here. And as you can see, since we are only editing this column, the effects will only apply to this column. I will set that back to default. We can add an image, we can add scrolling and mouse effects to this column, we can add a background overlay, as well as a border. Again, as you can see, the border only applies to this column, as that is the column that we have selected. Lastly, in the Advanced tab, again you can see we have our margin and our padding, which has not been filled as this is sitting nicely in the middle of the column. Moving on to the motion effects, we can add scrolling effects, mouse effects, and an entrance animation. Again, as you can see, it only applies to this column. Lastly, in the responsive attributes and custom CSS, this is again for in-depth development and you need not worry about this. Now that we have covered the column, we will move on to a widget. Again, using our mouse to navigate the site, you can see we have highlighted a widget as indicated by the blue border. Again, we will select the edit icon and the bar on the left will appear. Here we can change the text, and as you can see, the results are live. We can also add a link to this text that when clicked takes us to another page. In the styling section, we can change the color of the text, the typography, which includes the font, the size, the weight. We can transform the text, style the text, and add decorations. We can also change the line height and the letter spacing. Next, we can change the text shadow. Again, we will select the edit icon and we can change the settings to whatever is desired. Lastly, in the advanced section, again, we have our margin and padding, which as you can see, there is nothing currently there as it is sitting nicely in the middle. Moving on to the motion effects, we can add scrolling effects, mouse effects, as well as an entrance animation, as seen here. Moving on, we can add a background to this widget, which can be either a color or an image. We can also add a border. We can choose to have a normal border or a border that applies when we hover over the widget. We can change the positioning, and the responsive attributes and custom CSS is again for more in-depth development. You need not worry about this. We can do this by simply navigating the site with our mouse. We will highlight and select the section or widget that we are wishing to edit, and the window will appear on the left hand side. Once we are happy with all the changes we have made, we will go to the bottom left and we will select Update. That is how you would edit a page on your website.